All right, everybody. Welcome to What Got You Here Won't Get You There. We're talking about cost-effective strategies to take your e-commerce business to the next level. We're pretty excited to have this conversation. And before we get started, I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to the sponsors and our partners on this webinar. First up, we've got Johnny Blake with BigCommerce. Obviously, BigCommerce is a leading software as a service e-commerce platform. They're an incredible website, incredible software and technology, and we've been really privileged to have a chance to work with them. Next up, we've got Route, Rich with Route. Route is a premier post-purchase experience solution for online retailers, and they offer visual tracking and dynamic premium order protection, one-click code protection, things like that. Very, very cool service, very cool product, and we're honored to have both of these gentlemen here with us. Really quickly, my name is Brandon Lilly. I'll be the moderator today. I've been in small business and working in small business for years and years, and digital marketing as well professionally for the past 13 years. So I'm happy to answer questions and feed questions into the true professionals and the real gems of this webinar. So I'll go ahead and introduce them and let them introduce themselves really quickly. First up, we've got JB Kellogg. He is the co-founder and co-CEO of Marketing 360. JB, say hello.
Hey guys, glad to be here.
All right, JB is an incredible entrepreneur and an incredible leader, and I've had the privilege of working with him and for him for almost 8 years now. It's been incredible. Next up, we've got Johnny Blake, who's the regional channel account manager at BigCommerce. Say hello, Johnny.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I guess first things first, appreciate everyone joining us in the age of COVID when there are a million webinars competing for your time. So as Brandon said, I'm Johnny Blake. I am the regional channel account manager for the Western US here at BigCommerce. So I work really closely with some of our most strategic partners like Madwire, for example, right? Ultimately making sure that not only they're successful in terms of building on the platform, but also making sure their merchants are successful as well. So great to be here.
Johnny, I think we need an updated headshot for you, my friend. There's been some changes.
COVID has really done a toll on me from a haircut perspective and from a beard perspective. So I promise that is actually me.
Fair enough.
I like the optimizations.
Last but not least, we've got Rich Devine, who's the head of partner marketing at Route. Rich, say hello.
Hey, great to be with you. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you guys in the conversation today. Madwire is a really important partner for us. I'm kind of a grizzled old digital marketing vet, mostly in kind of big brand and media agencies. And this has been a really kind of enriching experience working with Madwire and our friends at BigCommerce, taking some of these strategies and bringing them to merchants and e-commerce brands of all size, whether you're just spinning up a shop or trying to grow a shop or a mature shop. So really looking forward to what I think is going to be a fun and entertaining conversation today.
I think so too. And based on that, here's a couple of the topics that we're going to cover. And remember, what we're doing is we're also going to be taking questions. So if you've got questions, please throw them in the chat and please throw them in the Q&A. We'll try to answer those live as well. We've got a couple of questions here, a couple of topics that we're going to cover, such as how do you know when you've maxed out your revenue potential and your growth? What are the signs? How do you assess a platform that's best for your business? How do you decide how you're going to grow? We're going to talk about, as a business owner, how do you know if you're making the right decision? What are trends that are affecting e-com stores, especially with shipping disruption? Rich, I'm looking at you. What are popular technologies that big companies, small companies don't? How can you access them? How can you compete with your quote unquote large competitor, right? We all know who those are. How do you balance risk of growth with that risk of loss? How do you know when you need to change up your marketing plan? And more. And the and more is going to come from you guys and hopefully from some arguments from our panelists here. I'm hoping that we're going to get some different opinions, some people that have different ways of accomplishing goals. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's just talk really quickly about how do you know when you need to take a business from where it is to where you see it going? JB, I think it's a great question for you. When I started Madwire Marketing 360, I think there was 50 or 60 employees, and now we're up well over 500 in 7 years. So what was the thought process? How do you balance that risk versus reward? And how do you take a company from where it is currently to where you envision it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's different for every business, but I think you just have to analyze what the opportunity is. And to me, I'm always focused more so on the opportunity, because the risk is ultimately not seizing the opportunity in my mind. So I think you just need to look at what the opportunity is, what's that going to take, and then what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you pursue that opportunity. The worst possible thing that's going to happen really is the risk, which oftentimes just is, it didn't work the way that you thought it would. So I think, you know, having a target, shooting for it, and then based on, you know, just start the journey. And as you're along the journey, you can always pivot. And you're probably going to pivot quite a few times from what the initial game plan was. But if you feel confident about the opportunity, you have a pretty good business plan. I actually just threw a video in chat here I did recently on 21 steps to starting a business, and that covers a lot of this. If you guys want to check that out to go into more detail for the sake of time. But I think you come up with the business plan, you feel good about it, you like the opportunity, you think about what the worst thing that could happen. If you feel good about that, then you just start pursuing it.
I love it. Johnny, that might even fall into your guys' realm as well. I know BigCommerce just went public, and that's been an incredible journey for you guys.
Yeah, it's certainly been a crazy couple of weeks, to say the least. Yeah, I made the joke coming in here that unfortunately I'm not sitting at my, you know, brand new house in Cabo. I'm still here in Austin, Texas, where we're headquartered. But yeah, it's been really crazy. I mean, I think when I joined the company, we only had about 400 employees, and we're well north of, I believe, 600, maybe 700 as of today. You know, so scaling not only from, you know, an employee perspective over the last couple of years since I've been with the company, but also, you know, taking the product to the point that it is today, you know, converting over to a business primarily based around an API-driven roadmap, right? A lot of things have changed pretty dramatically for us over the last couple of years. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy to ride that roller coaster.
Excellent. So what are some of the signs, and this is a question for anybody, what are some of the signs where you believe that you've maxed out your revenue or your potential growth? Like you've gone as far as you can. The risk that we all run into is that we don't know what we don't know, right? And especially for entrepreneurs and even with e-commerce, there's not the perfect roadmap because like JB said, every business is different. So what are some of the maybe consistent signs that you guys have seen? When do you know it's time to take the next step?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to jump in here and kind of kick us off. I mean, obviously, you know, this is a topic that really we could probably spend 4 hours talking about. And frankly, that's about how long we spend with most merchants that are kind of finding themselves in this position. So from an e-commerce platform perspective specifically, right, like how do you know when you've kind of maxed out your growth on your existing platform? That's normally the perspective that we're coming at this question with. I think the first one that comes to mind for me would be if you're bumping up against the functional limitations of your current platform, right? If, you know, by some way, the native functionality or the out-of-the-box functionality is just holding you back in some way. I was working with a merchant, I guess it's probably been about 12 months ago now. They sell latex mattresses online, similar to like a Casper or a Purple or a Lisa or something like that. And they were on another major SaaS e-commerce platform, one that I'm sure everyone on the call knows very, very well. And they grew a super successful business on that platform, right? They took it from, I believe, 250K to 6 million in GMV in just a few years on that platform. And for all intents and purposes, they really liked it, right? And they loved software as a service. But as their product catalog kind of grew in complexity over time, they started butting up against this one particular issue where they couldn't have more than 3 options per product, right? And so, I mean, if you're just selling t-shirts online or something like that, where you're just picking between, you know, size and color, for example, not that big of an issue, right? But for this particular merchant, right, they were trying to branch out into a new product category where they were selling not just mattresses, but mattress toppers as well. And in order to do that, they needed a minimum of 5 options per product, right? So, you know, from my perspective, that's a really specific example, but, you know, an example of a merchant that had so much pain around a singular issue that for them, it was enough to actually warrant a full replatform, right? And so for everyone on the call here today, it might be something completely different. But from my perspective, that's one of the first things to look for is, you know, is there anything that your native functionality, the core functionality of your platform is doing that's keeping you from selling in the way that you want to or that you need to? There are a couple others that come to mind. I don't know if you want to bounce around a little bit, but I'm happy to share a couple others that I think are important as well. Just depends what we want to do.
All right, well, let's get some feedback from some of the other folks as well. JB, Rich, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to focus on your brand, you know, today more than anything. I think, you know, you need to have a unique brand that stands out. And so, you know, there's a lot of e-commerce stores that look very similar to each other. And so what makes you stand out? What makes you different? And I think there's a big opportunity in terms of growing the store about increasing lifetime value per customer. And average ticket size as well. So any opportunities that you can think about there, bundling products, product recommendations on product pages. This product matches up with that. I see you're buying jelly. Do you also want peanut butter and bread? Like, you know, what makes sense to the customer? And then have a great brand experience. So send them a great customer care package with maybe even a handwritten note. Like, take time in the customer experience so that they tell their friends about you, because the customer acquisition generally is a losing business if they only buy from you once, but it's a winning business if they buy from you 2-3 times, and even better if they tell 2 or 3 friends. So how can you build such a good customer experience that they do business with you again, but then they're kind of wowed by it, so they tell their neighbor about it, right? Or they're getting their hair cut and they're telling everybody in the salon about it, you know? So how are you different? Do you send them a handwritten card with some Jolly Ranchers in there, like, you know, with a funny story or a picture in there? You know, make stories to be told, right? Because if it's a cool story and experience, and if it's something funny or unique, they may even take a picture of it and share it on social media. Now you just got in front of 200 people for the price of one, right? So I think we need to think more about the post-conversion marketing strategies, because I think a lot of times e-commerce stores are just looking for the initial acquisition, and that's good, that's important, you have to do that initially, but then how are you multiplying that on the back end? And that's the post-conversion strategies of making memorable experiences that, you know, they share on social media because it's unique, they tell stories about it, and they buy from you again. And if you just did those things, I think you see a much better ROI.
I think that leads into Rich, a question that we've got for you, which is, you know, some of the trends that are affecting e-com stores as it pertains to shipping. You know, I think we've all experienced this. There's the shipping delays and things like that. And when JB, you're talking about a great customer experience and taking something that, you know, honestly, as an e-commerce store, as an entrepreneur, you have very little control over from a shipping perspective. That last mile, you know, you've scaled, you've built your product, you've built your platform, you're selling, you now, you know, want to provide a great experience for the customer, but now you're relying on a third party to make it happen. Rich, what are some thoughts that you have on that, and how can we take this so that the customer has a great experience and that they come back to help you scale? Sure.
Yeah, you know, one lens to kind of look at that question through is really kind of pivoting off what JB said, and that's it's never too early to really think about your e-commerce store as a brand. And I think if we're to look at this discussion in terms of like life stages of an e-commerce brand, there's infancy when you're just spinning your store up and you just want to sell some stuff and make some money, and then you kind of grow into adolescence where, well, now it's time to start thinking about features and functionalities and maybe leveling up my game, and then growing into maturity where you're really scaling growth. I found that too often shop owners will only think about brand considerations, you know, during adolescence or maturity. And to JB's point, the right time to think about your brand and really positioning the strength and uniqueness of a brand is when you're starting. And when it comes to, you know, shipping dynamics, it's been really interesting. There's never been a greater time to start a store in terms of solutions like BigCommerce and all of the apps that reside in marketplaces like BigCommerce Marketplace or Shopify's Marketplace. You can really spin up a store and have some of those out-of-box solutions that can get you going fast. But one of the things that we've noticed, and this has especially been kind of underscored during pandemic, are some of the blockers or stressors that occur post-purchase. And so since February 2020, there's been a 20% increase in damaged packages, more than 130% increase in stolen packages or porch piracy. and the demand from customers to fulfill what we call WISMO requests, where is my order? There's a 200% increase in tracking behavior from customers. And so these are all dynamics that happen after an order has been submitted. And typically that's just not something that, young entrepreneurs or young shop owners think about. And that's one of the things that, we're really eager to solve is how can you solve tracking? How can you solve protection of orders? And when it comes to establishing your brand, one of the things that commerce brands don't really understand is that, like, as you were saying, Brandon, that final mile, once an order's been submitted and you kind of concede ownership of that post-purchase experience to a third party or to a carrier or a logistics partner, most brands just kind of wash their hand and, they've got their money in the bank. But you've got to understand that the customer's just invested in your brand, and how can you really kind of control and assert ownership over that period of time that exists between the order and when they receive that package in their hands. And that's what we try to do at Route in terms of delivering shipping protection and offering really simple claims in case something bad does happen, whether it's theft or damage, and being able to protect that and just take care of your customers, much like Amazon does.
Yeah, well, and just to jump in there and piggyback off of that a little bit, Rich, that's a really interesting point, and something that I think about a lot is the fact that, when we're thinking about e-commerce, really what we're buying, we're not just buying the product, right? Whatever it is, or the service, right? We're buying trust essentially, which is, I have paid for this product or service, and now I'm trusting that you're going to get it to me. Right. And so there are all these little bitty micro moments of customers that are interacting with e-commerce brands. And the more that you can do to foster that trust through apps and integrations like a Route, for example, I think is absolutely pivotal for e-commerce merchants. And you mentioned something else that I thought was interesting, sort of, tying that dichotomy between merchants that are sort of in their infancy versus those that are entering more into adolescence. And this is something that we see a lot too, right? I can actually prove out that most of the merchants we talk to that are truly in their infancy, so many of them are focused on design and creative, and for good reason, because you have to have a brand to put on your site initially to stand it up, right? And it's very, very important. But I think a lot of times merchants don't necessarily have the foresight, and again, for good reason, because they've just not been down this road before, to think about things like integrating other mission critical systems into their e-commerce experience, right? We know that no one is waking up in the morning going, you know what I'm excited to do today? I'm excited to reevaluate my tech stack, or, I'm excited to go evaluate ERPs, right? And certainly most merchants don't have, a spare 30 to 50K sitting around to invest in an ERP integration or a POS integration, right? And so, if that's the reason why your systems don't talk to each other today, that's completely fine. And we get that, right? It's not a cause for concern, or certainly not a cause for, re-platforming on a large scale, right? But I think it's important to note, sort of tying that distinction between infancy and adolescence, that, if you're on a platform and the API endpoints certainly don't exist for you to build out integrations, or, the APIs of your existing platform just aren't fast enough to make those integrations successful, right? That's the kind of thing that, as you're growing from infancy into more adolescence or adulthood, that are going to become really, really important, right? Because over time, not having systems integrated, whether it's a POS or an ERP or a PIM, for example, right? Oftentimes that's going to have a direct impact on customer experience. So I think that just dovetails well with kind of what you were saying, Rich.
Yeah, I agree. And just to spin off on that, I really like looking at this through the lens of kind of those life stages. And there's been this really interesting force that's very current, where some of these solutions were, only available to really big brands, like the idea of headless commerce, decoupling some of the technology from the front end to the back end. That's something that only an enterprise brand would think of, but those solutions are now immediately accessible to really brands of any life stage and any size. And so I can get on with BigCommerce and really fulfill the, you know, the needs or the value of a headless commerce solution. And some of the traditional stressors that occur during growth, like, you know, just simple things like page load time or, you know, API connectivity, those can be solved for me much earlier and at a much lower expense than, you know, than really several years ago. And that's I think something that smaller merchants don't necessarily understand, but need to understand, because that's an advantage you can take that you can really manifest today immediately. And you don't have to wait to become a big brand in order to take advantage of some of those solutions that are more accessible.
Yeah, that sort of ties into the whole question around, you know, how do I effectively compete with my, you know, insert largest competitor here, right? I couldn't agree more. I think if you were to rewind the clock, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, there wasn't this plethora of apps and integrations to extend e-commerce platforms to do things that truly do allow you to compete with some of those bigger brands, whether it's Amazon or Walmart or whoever, right? So I think that's spot on.
That really fits in with one of the questions that we've got here, which is, what are the popular technologies that larger companies use that maybe a smaller e-com store either, one, doesn't have the money to, can't afford it, doesn't have access to it just because it's not well marketed to what you might consider to be a smaller e-com store or a smaller operation. JB, I think you're great to kick this off, because that's the world that we live in, right? Talking about how can we take technologies that are available to the Amazons of the world and turn that into something that a smaller company can have access to at a lower price point that makes sense for their market and their industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of tools for e-commerce, and I think that, you know, when you think about a new store, some of the things they might not be fully leveraging are things like email automation that a larger brand would be leveraging. So email automation can be a great way to get additional sales from your customer base. Maybe you could set up initially a journey that every month of the year it sends them an email with some sort of a promotion for like the monthly holiday or something like that, or sends birthday messages with coupon codes. Sends referral type messages, journeys, maybe where there's a call to action for on social media to get information, but maybe not make a purchase. Maybe that's just step one. You know, maybe they could put their email in just to get a coupon or a gift card, and that puts them into a journey. And now you follow up and eventually they become a customer. I think the bigger brands are thinking about more ways to have touch points with their customers in an automated way and staying in front of people, because it's just about renting space in people's minds so that when they need your products or services, they think of you next, right? And to do that, you need to be in front of them. And so I think strategies, you know, I always think for an e-commerce store, the gift card strategy is one of the best marketing campaigns, because you can just run a campaign on social media that says, here's a $10 gift card. It's free to anybody. Put your email in and you get your free gift card, right? Now this is building a list when they do this, right? Yeah, you're going to have to give up $10 on the first sale. Big deal, right? That's not very expensive. So you build this big list, and now you can start nurturing these people, you know, and people share that stuff. Hey, share this gift card out. We're only giving away 1,000 and that's it. First come, first serve, right? Maybe you don't even cap it really in the back end though, but it creates like urgency, and they start really sharing it and getting it out there. So I think somebody put in the chat here, what are some strategies for a new e-commerce store from a marketing perspective to get the ball going, maybe that are low cost? Well, that's the strategy right there, right? And if you can target the audience, you know, if I'm selling golf clubs, what are the golf club audience on social media? Where are they spending their time? Who are they following? What content are they watching? What are they engaging with? Go there and start targeting those people. Send them the free gift card, direct message them the free gift card, and then maybe run some campaigns targeting that group for the free gift card. This is building an audience, right? That's step one a lot of times, which leads to the sale. And a lot of times the new e-commerce store is just thinking about how do I get a sale right now, right? And so what you're missing is all the work that leads up to that. And I think the bigger brands use strategies that do that probably a little bit better.
Excellent. Any other thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I was going to say, and ours is, you know, from my perspective, it's much more tied into the technology aspect of the question. But for merchants out there that are maybe more slotted under that SMB space today, but are just curious, right? Like, what are the types of third-party or source of truth systems that we see on a really consistent basis from our mid-market and enterprise merchants, the folks that are already pretty established online? I think, for us, without a doubt, the number one piece of technology that we see from our mid-market and enterprise merchants would be like enterprise resource planning systems, right? So essentially, if there are folks out there that aren't really familiar with what ERP actually means, it's just a suite of technologies that integrate things like inventory, order management, accounting, HR, CRM, sometimes more, sometimes less, but integrating all of that under one sort of technology suite. And I would say, from our perspective, it's got to be in the 50 to 60% range of all the mid-market and enterprise merchants that we work with. They either already have an ERP or they're in the process of selecting one. But I think Rich made this important point earlier, which is, I think historically merchants have thought about things like an ERP as something that's reserved exclusively for mid-market and enterprise brands, right? And that's certainly the case for some of the solutions, right? If you're going to go with a Microsoft Dynamics or an Oracle NetSuite, for example, yeah, you may not want to do that if you're, if you just eclipsed 200K online this year. It might not be quite ready for that. But there are systems out there like a Brightpearl, for example, which is a true software as a service ERP that really is geared toward the SMB market as well as the kind of lower mid market, right? And I think those are the types of solutions that merchants that are, sort of toward the tail end of their infancy, that are interested in kind of exploring where are we headed as a business, and do we think we're going to be in a position one day where we want to take a lot of these manual workflows that we're doing day to day and kind of combine them in with what's happening from an e-commerce perspective. That's what we see the most of traditionally is going to be ERPs. I mean, there are tons of others too, whether it's product inventory management or order management systems or CRMs, but traditionally I would say, if you're a merchant trying to figure out what potentially would give me the most bang for my buck, but certainly you want to do the evaluation to make sure it's not going to be overkill for you today. But in my opinion, it would be the ERP. That's what we see so often integrated with BigCommerce.
Yeah, I'd like, Brandon, I think just to make it really practical and actionable for your audience, I think, look at this as the idea of what is my stack? What is my, what are all the components that I need to build to both facilitate growth and get things done today? And I like to look at, the architecture of your e-commerce stack through the framework of a customer journey. So, pre-purchase, how do I get people to my site? How do I attract new customers? Everything from media and marketing and social and referrals. And, the great thing, and I'm just in love with the Marketing 360 platform, because on that platform, you can really solve a lot of the pieces that belong to that acquisition phase or that pre-purchase phase of your stack. And then there's the middle part of that customer journey, which is point of purchase. BigCommerce is a great solution, and you can put a bunch of pieces and attach that to a BigCommerce or a Shopify installation there. And I really want to highlight the final third that we discussed earlier, which is post-purchase, and there are pieces that really are just mandatory as part of building that stack. And I mentioned it earlier, this is something that Amazon has standardized. They've really nailed post-purchase. They've set a standard in terms of, what are my shipping and logistics solutions? I've got to have a solution for that. What does customer service look like? A solution like Gorgeous is great for both small and medium-sized brands there. And then for us, there's tracking and shipping protection. The nice thing about the solution at Route is that it's free to merchants. As you put all these pieces together and assemble your stack, there's a cost impact, right? And one of the things I love about Route is that it's free. It's free to merchants, and it really fulfills something that, again, Amazon standardized, which is, how do I take care of my customers if something goes wrong? And so that's, the answer to that is it's not sexy, but it's really necessary, and that's shipping protection or insurance. And so being able to take care of customers, but protect yourself in terms of cost, that's, you know, a mandatory part of your post-purchase stack, and something that must be considered in addition to pre-purchase, point of purchase elements that you add to your overall mix.
Absolutely. That actually leads us into another question by Sandy. Do I lose my technological advantage if my e-commerce store is on BigCommerce, but all my other competitors move to BigCommerce as well? I think the question, the root of the question here is, how do you, if everybody's on an even playing field, anybody can sign up for Route, anybody can use BigCommerce, anyone can use Marketing 360. What's the differentiating factor for you as a business when you're going next level? You know, we've got same access to the different technology stacks. So now how do we compete? And this may also feed into Adrian's question about maximizing marketing opportunities. So
yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to touch on that. I think in my mind, I mean, you could give me a paintbrush and Michelangelo a paintbrush and you get a much different outcome. And so I think, you know, you need to have the best tools, but then you need to actually use them to the best of your ability. And, you know, you see contractors all using the best tools, but, you know, their quality is different. And so it comes down to step one, you need to have the best tools, no matter what. Step two is, how do you most effectively utilize those tools? Are you taking advantage of all the features? Are you using it to its fullest ability? You know, a lot of times it comes down to the creator. So, you know, you can have the greatest platform in the whole world, but if you're not properly utilizing it, you're not going to get the outcome that you could have. So I think leveling up your knowledge there, learning, jumping in on webinars like this, digging into knowledge bases, things like that, are all really what ultimately makes the difference out there at the end of the day. And then obviously it comes down to your brand, right? Having a brand, two brands could be both using BigCommerce, for example. One's very successful, one's not. They both have a great tool, but one's successful and one's not because of their branding and the strategies and how they're using the tool. So that would be my thought on that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, sorry. I think that was really key, and something that JB really kicked off, I think, is really the best answer to that question. First of all, this is about parity. And so I would not say that solutions like BigCommerce or Shopify are kind of homogenizing, the system. I actually think it's allowing small and mid-market e-commerce brands to really quickly achieve parity with bigger brands. But the key is what JB said earlier, and that's focus on your brand. I mean, that ultimately we're marketing to human beings that have emotions. They're not robots. So yeah, we need great technology, but don't lose sight of that human element, which is, how do I differentiate on brand? And one of the things that I think is really key, and Sandy here just posed a question, and this is kind of in response to her question. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of sites that are all kind of doing the same thing. But if you can focus on empathy and understand who your customer really is and really resonate in a really empathetic way and say, you know what, I'm not going to try to be everything to everyone. I'm not Amazon. I'm not focused on breadth. This is what I do. This is what I do well. And this is my customer. And if you can really understand who your customer is and focus your brand and everything you do in terms of that total experience on really delivering a beautiful experience to that customer, that's a great way to differentiate and cut through the noise, even if everybody else is using many of the same solutions.
Yes. Just to jump in there really quickly, I could not agree more with that. You know, I think the number one advantage that SMBs have over even some of the bigger players like an Amazon, for example, is the ability to be human and to establish real connections with customers. I was actually listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast the other day, and he was interviewing a guy named Derek Sivers. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with him. It's episode 370 for anyone that cares. But Derek started in one of the earlier e-commerce companies. He was selling CDs online. His company was called CD Baby, and he started this in the late 90s. Originally, he was a musician himself, and he was just looking for a way to scratch his own itch, right, and be able to sell his music without having a record deal. And he had a lot of friends within the indie music scene as well. They were asking him, hey, we saw you're selling your CDs online. Can we get in on that? Can you sell our CDs as well? And so he starts doing that, and he's on the entire music industry as a whole, right? And the way that music was traditionally sold, right? And so one night, just kind of on a whim, he went and looked at his order confirmation email, which was something canned and generic, like your order is shipped today. Thank you for your new business, or whatever it said. But just kind of to make people laugh, and on a whim, he decided to completely rewrite this order confirmation email into something that was quirky, that was human, that was funny, that ideally would just put a smile on somebody's face, right? And I encourage people to Google that and go look it up. It went viral, or about as viral as something could go in the late 90s before social media. This took him 20 minutes to write, right? It generated thousands of new customers for CD Baby, right? And so, you know, I think, Rich, to your point, this is the type of competitive advantage that e-commerce merchants today, even if you're an SMB, you have that kind of advantage against someone like Amazon, because they're operating at such a scale, right? There are thousands, well, probably not thousands, there are at least dozens of micro interactions that customers are having with your brand every single day. And if you can find a way to take those interactions and make them as real and human as possible, I think you'd be surprised by how effective that kind of a strategy is. So anyway, everyone go look at that email. It's really funny.
Going viral back in the 90s, I'm pretty sure, was printing it off and then sharing it with friends. And yeah,
Exactly.
That's exactly what it was. Okay, so we got a question from James here, and I love this. JB, it's actually directed at you. How do I know when I'm spending my time on something that is urgent but not important, whereas essentially the owner of the business is working on something that has to be done, but really his time or her time is better spent doing something that only they can do? What are my options? What are my choices? How do I account for that? Because you've only got so much time in the day, and you've only got so much energy during that day.
Yeah, well, I can just speak from my own experience. The way I tackle that is I tackle things in batches with block scheduling. So over the course of growing, Madwire from 2 people to 600 people, I've lived that. And so what I ended up working on and coming to was, you have those big ticket items that only you can do, that you absolutely have to do, but you can't push them off. And so what you need to do is figure out a period of time during the day that you focus on those things no matter what. And then when you're done with that, you have to be disciplined to say, all right, I'm done with this. Now I'm going to tackle all the urgent matters and do everything that needs to happen in a real-time capacity to run the business. And so for me personally, I did the big ticket items early in the morning. So I start my day early, about 5 a.m. I start in the office every day. I tackle the big ticket items, pretty intensely until about 9 a.m. So it's a good chunk of time. I can cover a lot of ground there. And then I just start tackling the things that the day throws at you after that. I keep it organized. I stay very organized. So I'm always adding things to my list, but I'm disciplined to not stop what I'm doing and do those things right then. I put it to my list. And if it's very important, I put it to the top of the list, but I don't start it until the time period allows for that. So I think it's about being organized and being disciplined, and then, staying to it. It's really easy to be working on that big ticket item, and then you feel like you're making progress and you just don't want to stop, and you burn the whole day, and then you pushed off the urgent items, and that creates stress and problems in the future. It's also real easy the other way, where an urgent item comes in, you feel like you have to stop everything you're doing and do it. But in my experience, that's not necessarily the case. It's in our own mind sometimes. Waiting 2 hours or even 24 hours oftentimes makes no negative impact. And in many cases, you'll actually come up with the solution in the shower the next morning, just by letting it sit in the crock pot for 12 to 24 hours. So, those would be my tips on that front. That's worked well for me.
I love it. I think some other things to think about there are, what are you doing that could be automated, right? Maybe there's a manual process or something like that you could automate. Maybe you need software to do that, or you need a tech solution. Rich, that's a great example of what Route does specifically, because if you're spending a lot of time going back and forth with customers, yep, your order was shipped out, here's the tracking information. You said those requests have increased by 200%. Or you've got a customer that's emailing you or calling you saying, where's my product? It wasn't delivered. It says it was delivered and it's gone. You know, all of those things take up time. So to JB's point, blocking out your day and handling the issues in a block capacity and understanding like, I'm working on this and then I'm working on this is incredibly valuable. But there's also something to be said for automating some of the things that you're working on, either by bringing the right person into the right role and trusting them, or by automating it with software. And I use Route as an example because I've experienced it myself. That's a great tool to use to offload some of the problems that are urgent and do need real-time solutions, but you still need to run the business.
Yeah, that's a really great example. Just to kind of spin off what JB said, the power of networking and e-commerce, like we think about all these other e-commerce brands as competitors, but for the most part, 99% of e-commerce brands should be friends. And so their approach to solutions, whether it's automation solutions or things that can help me kind of prioritize where my focus should be or how I look at growth, like I really believe in the value of finding your tribe or your e-commerce network, and that, you know, the panel here can comment on where to find that, but that can be one of your greatest resources in terms of finding solutions and finding others that have walked that path and solved some of those problems and really appealing to them as a source of guidance. And then to your point, Brandon, yeah, there are a lot of solutions, and, you know, obviously, selfishly, Route is one of those. And one of the things I think a lot of brands find as you start growing is the impact to customer service. The more orders you're fulfilling, the more customer service requests, the more problems you face, and so there's an issue of scale because each of those issues takes the same amount of time, and your velocity of orders, you can handle that through automation, but the amount of time it takes to handle each customer service request is static. So if you were to plot that on a graph, customer service can quickly kind of overwhelm you. And so Route is one of those solutions that, yeah, it really helps you preserve the value of your relationship. It helps you retain customers. It helps you take care of things at no cost to the merchant in terms of, you know, covering, you know, loss, damage, and theft. But one of the kind of undervalued aspects of a solution like Route and other solutions is the impact to customer service. We will help you increase revenue. We will help you, you know, maintain relationships, but there's also this, you know, value add, which is we will reduce customer service inquiries because we're taking care of claims. We're taking care of any issue related to loss, damage, or theft. And so you can essentially eliminate those requests from your customer service kind of queue, and that'll relieve you and give you time to focus on growing more business or for fulfilling more business.
I think that's a great example. And it fulfills exactly what we're talking about in this webinar, right? Cost-effective solutions to help scale your e-commerce business. Route is free, so free for the merchant. So that answers the question right there. We've got some other questions. Johnny, this one's for you specifically about BigCommerce. How does BigCommerce as a platform scale? And we've talked about this a little bit where, JB, I think you brought it up. If you're going to build a business, you've got to plan to scale it. So if you're using maybe a GoDaddy website or Squarespace or Wix or something like that, those have a very difficult time in scaling from an e-commerce perspective. They all have their place in the market, but from an e-com perspective, it's difficult to scale them. So what's the right time to choose a platform like BigCommerce? Is it in the beginning? Is it a little bit later? Do you want to transition? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think what my advice on this topic would be the first thing that merchants should do, because everyone is in a different place, is to just have a really, really honest self-assessment of the business, right? Are you just now starting and you just have a great idea and maybe a prototype, or have you been selling for 6 months and so you've kind of proven the market fit, right? Are you pretty established and you've been selling for 3 years? I think it's really important to do that before you even get into the process of even assessing platforms, right? But once you've done that step, and asked yourself some really tough questions like, you know, what's working, what's not working, right? How quickly do we need to be live on a new platform? What do we want our user experience to look like, for example? You know, what does my tech stack look like today? Do I even have a tech stack? Am I planning on building one out in the future to integrate with my system? As I think that's really the first step before you even start to think about platforms, because ideally you'll come out of that exercise with a pretty thorough requirements document, including things like, what are my non-negotiables? What are the things that I absolutely have to have out of my e-commerce platform? What would be a nice to have, right? What would be the things that aren't irrelevant, but pretty much any platform could handle? So to answer your original question, you know, a little bit more specifically, on BigCommerce, you can start out as an absolutely brand new business that's never sold anything, right? We see that all the time. You know, our retail plans range from $29 a month up to $300 a month. There are 3 plans there, so $29, $79, and $300. And then you don't even get into enterprise pricing until you're doing like $1 million north online annually, right? So theoretically with BigCommerce, right, I know $29.99 is not free, right? But in terms of, you know, if we're talking about cost-effective strategies and ways to bootstrap your growth, it's about as easy a way as you can get to get online, to be really agile, to test new ideas, to see if you have product market fit, you know, to get online quickly, right? Materially faster than you could with an open source technology, for example. And so I think, you know, the answer to the question would be, it really just depends what you want, right? You know, theoretically, you could go with another SaaS platform if you have a super streamlined product catalog and you're not planning on being too complex over time. You know, but my recommendation would be to go with something like a BigCommerce, or at least start with SaaS, unless you determine that you just absolutely have to go with an open source piece of technology, because inevitably you're going to inherit a lot of additional maintenance and things that kind of go back to our last question, which was, how do I free up more time for myself and more headspace to focus on things that are really important for me? And I guess just to kind of tie a bow on that really quickly, a couple things specifically I would be looking for if I was a merchant evaluating e-commerce platforms, BigCommerce or otherwise. I would look for a platform that is really truly built for growth, right? That has a lot of native functionality out of the box, right? If you're in the process of evaluating platforms and you find that you're going to need dozens of apps to make your store work the way you want it to, it's probably a pretty good sign that that's not going to be a robust enough platform for you, right? Another question would be, how much of the platform is accessible via APIs, right? How fast are those APIs? If you're planning on eventually needing to integrate with other systems, those are questions that are really, really important to know up front. You know, does the platform have the ability to handle truly complex catalogs, right? There are some other things around performance that I also think are really important, things like uptime, you know, things like hosting, things like security, that I think you certainly need to take into consideration as a merchant, right? Because, you know, not all platforms are created equal. Not even all SaaS e-commerce platforms are created equal. So doing your own due diligence and making those platforms tell you, right, what is your average uptime over the last 5 years, right? Where is my site going to be hosted if I go with your SaaS solution, right? If you go open source, you're handling all of that yourself, right? And finally, you know, how do you handle PCI compliance? How do I know that you're going to keep my customers' credit card information safe and secure? So these are all the types of things that I would be thinking about if I was a merchant, trying to evaluate, you know, maybe I'm brand new, maybe I've been selling for a while, and just trying to get to some sort of sanity around where do you even start. I think BigCommerce is a great place for the vast majority of merchants out there. So.
Excellent. JB, there's a question from Sandy I think you can answer. How can someone quickly reposition their business when their entire product line is based off of an import model that has recently become impossible? I think you could change out any one of those words and it would apply to just about everybody in this room. How can I reposition my business when X happened? How can I pivot quickly?
Yeah, well, actually, this one's more common recently, right? Yep. I've actually heard of this problem of losing access to products. I think that's what happened to Under Armour, right? I mean, they kind of get cut off there. I mean, it really comes down to what you're selling and whatnot, but off the top of my mind, I think this could be an opportunity. for you. So what I would do is look at, out of the products that you were selling from the foreign import, what was the best product or two? And how can you maybe develop that product? And I would do some research and try to discover that. You might be able to have a better product, a better brand with better margins at the end of the day. So this actually could be lucky, not unlucky, the situation. It's easier oftentimes to sell one product 100 times than 100 products one time. And what I mean by that is maybe just focus on one product and just get really good at that. Develop that, sell that, put all of your hours behind it. Because if you have, 8-10 hours a day to invest in your brand and your business, if you have 100 products, how many minutes is that per product? Not very much. If you have one product, you got 8 or 10 hours a day that you can invest into this product, right? Then so, if I'm selling like the golf club example, like earlier, I could sell all the golf clubs, or I could just have one driver that eliminates the slice, right? There's a market for that. And if I could just build a brand around my one driver that eliminates the slice, I could probably sell a whole lot more product, generate a lot more revenue than I could just generally trying to sell all golf clubs. So it allows you to really hone in your vision, your brand, your messaging, your tagline, your content, everything, behind that one idea, right? And if you can get in front of the right audience there, that's what really increases sales. So long story short, this could be a great opportunity to identify what is that one product that you could sell, that you could reshift your business behind and grow. And maybe it wasn't even one of those products you had imported. Maybe it's something else, right? That doesn't really matter, but figure out what that is. This could be your opportunity to do that.
And then when we're talking about scaling and growth, that's after you've got that first product nailed down and you're known for that product. That's where you start adding on the other thing, like the tees or the golf bags or the visors. Or I don't play golf. I assume those are things that everyone needs. So you start adding on to it. All right. We've got 3 minutes left. So I would say for each one of you guys, give me your 1 minute sales pitch. What's 1 minute, totally focused, the advice that you could give to an e-commerce owner that's trying to scale their business? Rich, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah. I'll speak to what I know best, and that's post-purchase. But, it's great to acquire customers. It's great to convert them, but it's so much more cost efficient to retain them rather than just trying to refill the bucket over and over and let them leak out because you've got a bad customer experience or bad post-purchase experience. And so, I'll use the remaining 30 seconds here to just pitch Route. Again, there's nothing more low cost than something that's no cost. And so, yeah, please consider Route. It's really a beautiful experience for your customers. It allows them to protect their orders from loss, damage, or theft. It's an easy install. You can do that through your relationship with Madwire, or you can download it off of the marketplace for BigCommerce or any of the other major e-commerce platforms. It's a 5 to 7 minute install. You can allow your customers to protect their orders as well as track their orders universally through our visual tracking app. And that's something that it will have exponential value in terms of retaining customers, building customer loyalty, eliminating customer service costs, and really coming to parity with big players like Amazon, who are already offering those types of post-purchase solutions. And it's set that standard psychologically with all customers and quite frankly, most, if not all of your customers.
Excellent. Johnny, your turn.
Yeah, so I'll keep mine pretty short and sweet because we are technically at 1:29 based on my computer's time. So, for anyone that does not really know who BigCommerce is, we are a software as a service e-commerce platform for merchants at any stage of growth. We have 60,000 merchants using the platform today. And I think the reason we've had so much traction is because we're truly combining the best of software as a service with the best of open source technologies, meaning you're getting a lot of out-of-the-box functionality with BigCommerce. We're handling upgrades, updates, PCI compliance, bug fixes, hosting, et cetera. And we're combining that with open source, meaning lots of native functionality out of the box, a curated app ecosystem to allow you to extend the platform, full flexibility on the front end so that you can rip and replace our design framework and go with something that's unique to your business specifically, and ultimately allowing you to tie into other systems. In my opinion, it's the best e-commerce platform in terms of those that can actually grow and scale right alongside your business. So I think we're right at time. JB, you're on the hook.
Take us home.
I'll be real quick. BigCommerce and Route are amazing, highly recommended. If you really want to grow your brand, check out Marketing 360. Growing your brand is very complex these days. It's multi-channel. You have to be running campaigns and managing things on social media. You need to be asking for reviews, managing your reputation. You need email marketing and automation and text message marketing. If you have a retail store, you need listings management and everything in between. There's a lot to it. The beautiful thing about Marketing 360 is from one login, you have everything you need within one platform to truly grow your brand. So check out Marketing 360. It integrates nicely with Route and BigCommerce. So we got the trifecta here between the three of us. I think we pretty much have every angle covered.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've got additional questions, you can always reach really any one of us on any of our social channels. We'll be posting this video up on YouTube a little bit later so folks can access it. Again, any questions we're happy to answer. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to check out BigCommerce and Route. They're incredible partners. And if you're interested, check out marketing360.com as well. JB, Johnny, and Rich, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you guys. I know we'll have more chances to do things like this in the future. Everyone else, thanks for joining and happy marketing.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.